Welcome to Paranoid Pages, your portal to the thought-provoking world of underground comics out of print magazines and other rare media. We'll discover hidden gems up close and in detail to capture the magic of pictures and words combined. So, gather around, friends. This is Paranoid Pages.
Check, check. Here we are. It's Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve. We're just going to get into it because I got Christmas cookies to start eating. We got presents to wrap. We've got traps to set. I think this might be the year we actually catch them. But in case we don't, I just wanted to get into one of my favorite topics. And that is the self-evident idea that Santa Claus is actually a mushroom. I'm going to make a case. It might not even be a novel case. And in fact, there's even children's books about it already. This one right here, I wish it was mine. It's not mine. It's called Santa Sold Shrooms. And it kind of breaks down the whole concept. Christmas and everything. So we'll get into this one. This is probably the super OG one. Merry Christmas, everybody. We got magic mushrooms and religion and alchemy. I don't have the sacred mushroom and the cross anymore, at least not a hard copy, just because it got incredibly expensive. But I got a few other ones too. I've brought these up in a few other talks about unrelated stuff, but Road to Ulysses and Persephone's Quest, these were both written by R. Gordon Wasson, and R. Gordon Wasson was basically long backstory. But he was like a mushroom expert. And without R. Gordon Wasson, allegedly, we might not even know about half of the organic psychedelics that the Western world is aware of at this point. So I'll get into a little bit more depth on some of those ones. But I guess let's just start with a children's book, I guess. So for anyone that's not aware, the basic premise is that Santa Claus is represented by a shaman, and because in the winter months they would live in these little yurts, and maybe I'll bring up some graphics in a second. But hey, Michelle, in the yurts, if the snow would pile up over the front door, you wouldn't be able to get into the front door. So the shaman would come by, and if the shaman was the town doctor, the town priest, the town everything when it came to some stuff. So in order for him to be able to get into your house, they would go in through the chimney. And when they came in through the chimney, some of the goods that they had were mushrooms, specifically Amanita mushrooms. And here, the book's going to do a better job of illustrating some of this stuff than I am. Santa Sold Shrooms. And no, I'm not going to read the whole thing out in like a children's voice. Only because it's longer than a typical kid's book would be. But we will zoom into it a little bit. So yeah, I'm not going to read it out beat for beat, but we were definitely going to look at all the pictures. And they're talking about the North Pole, middle of the ocean. This is probably based on a spherical Earth model, I'd assume. And then here we go. The reindeer people. They're called the Sami, the nomadic reindeer herders. So here's the first big one, right? It starts with reindeer herders, specifically guys that are constantly around reindeer. And one of the things that reindeer can do is they can eat these Amanita Muscaria mushrooms, and when they pee it out, right? Don't eat the yellow snow. Well, if one of these shamans ate the yellow snow, they'd actually get a psychedelic visions and all sorts of hallucinations without some of the downsides that are attributed to eating Amanita Muscarias. So I wonder who the first guy was that, hey, let's take a bite. And then it started tripping out, and then he convinced other people to do it. I wonder what's weirder, the first guy that did it on his own or the first guy that did it because someone told him to do it. But either way, Santa was a shaman ultimately because he was a reindeer herder that ate reindeer pee, and he started tripping out from it. And we're oversimplifying that a little bit. And here we are, right? Merry Christmas. How Christmas got its name. And again, I'm not going to read the whole thing out because this is like a sort of a, poetry mixed with prose here. But they're asking, why isn't it called Noaid Mas or Winter Solstice Day? Noaid is like Yule centuries. It's complicated. When the Christians came along, they adapted the solstice celebration to honor Jesus' birth. And I guess since it's all about new hope and embracing the return of light, it seemed like a good fit to them. And then, they talk about Jesus not being related to Santa necessarily, although maybe that's for next Christmas. We'll get into that. Is Jesus Santa? Because Jesus was also a mushroom. And maybe we'll get into that today, actually. You can see here's the priest eating the Eucharist, right? The egg, the holy egg. And then Santa and Jesus. So, they're actually going to get into it now. And the lost symbol of Christmas. I mean, this really does kind of sum it up for me. So, I remember when I read Alice in Wonderland, blah, blah, blah. You mean magic mushrooms? You swore you'd keep that hippie stuff to yourself until she was in college. We're kind of talking about hippie mushrooms, although hippies definitely don't have a monopoly on this. And if anything, it was your old boy, Robert Gordon Wasson, homeboy right here, that might have been responsible for the whole hippie movement and everything. The full connection was Robert Gordon Wasson being funded by, the CIA essentially through J.P. Morgan. But through that, he has connections with Henry Luce of Time Life magazine, who's also a member of the Century Club, who also happens to be a member of this big hub. And Henry Luce got so turned on by this stuff, he would just openly advocate for anyone that worked for him to just do psychedelics. Like, you definitely wouldn't get fired. If anything, might even get promoted. So, and then if you notice, this is an artist illustration, so of course they can make it look however they want. But if you look at a lot of old Christmas ornaments, a lot of them are related to these Amanita Muscaria mushrooms. And I'll bring up some images of some of that stuff. And then, high as a kite, flying reindeer. A lot of this correlates to having this feeling that you're like astrally projecting, or, you're having an out-of-body experience. So again, Santa's sleigh, flying around. Hopefully this isn't like completely groundbreaking to anybody. And then here's a graphic illustration of one of these yurts. So it's not quite like a colonial or Victorian apartment building where Santa's got to figure out a way to get in everywhere, but the OG concept of coming in through the chimney was closer to this. Like, if you couldn't get into the front door because it's blocked up by snow, the most common way would just be go up through the top of the yurt and down like this. And this is kind of how the legend began, or at least that's the opinion of this particular line of thinking. And then when he comes down into the house, right, he's got this big burlap sack, and it's full of these colorfully wrapped presents. And that you would actually want to hang, I don't know if this book gets into it, but you would actually want to hang these over some source of fire to dehydrate them and to help, make the process of them breaking down a little bit faster so that they're not as toxic. So that's also where the hanging by the chimney with care kind of comes from. World Tree and the North Star. Santa traded mushrooms. So yeah, he didn't just pop into your house and give you mushrooms for free and then pop out during the night. This was the shaman, and you might need this for any number of remedies. So this was the way that he would pay you in addition to whatever services that he was providing directly. But these Amanita Muscaria mushrooms were essentially his form of currency. So here it is. Here's the Don't Eat the Yellow Snow. Shout out Frank Zappa. Are there any Frank Zappa fans in the house? Nanook rubs it, I believe. Inside Zappa joke. But here it is. Here's the reindeer that pees. And honestly, the reindeer can eat the pea too. And then they would start acting weird. So, I don't think that there's any documented evidence. But it seems that if you're a shaman or if you're a reindeer herder and you just see that every time the reindeer eat this yellow pea, they start acting really strange. Yeah, go ahead. Go grab a handful and do some experiments on yourself. Here it is. Son of God was a fungus. This is a great representation of the Holy Grail, because when a mushroom grows and it dries out in the sun, it'll kind of go from this shape, right, and then it'll start to dry and turn upright, just as the rim kind of curls up. And then if this happens, this red pigment this is kind of inverted, right? You wouldn't see it this way. That this red part would be on the inside of this cup. Imagine this thing kind of like turns up and inside out. What happens if this turns up and inside out, and then rain gets in there and it sits in there? That red pigment will leach into the water. So if you walk by, you see an actual literal golden looking chalice, because even the stem will turn kind of like a golden brown color just from being in the sun. So you'd see this little golden chalice with a red liquid inside of it. And if you drank that red liquid, or if you ate that chalice, you would talk to God. So yeah, Santa's a saint, Saint Nicholas, the mushroom, and drug by any other name. Yeah, it's a drug. And then here's another great example. Here's a modern day version of a house, and it's been snowed in. And you might not expect to see anyone actually crawl down here. They'd probably die or get stuck, but it's kind of the exact same concept. So, and then yeah, spread this to friends and family. Shout out to the authors. I am not affiliated at all. This just happens to be a really awesome book. So here's the creators of the book. And again, this one was Santa Sold Shrooms: Origin Story of the World's Most Famous Person. I'll throw a link to this one down below. I got this one used some thrift bookstore. I think it was like $2 or $3. Well worth it. So let's get into some more, I guess, deeper into the weeds on these specific topics. So the whole premise of like Santa sold shrooms, and then therefore Santa is a mushroom, which is kind of like a funny oversimplification of that. But it also might be that Jesus is a mushroom. And I think it's for the exact same reason that Santa is, because those shamans were kind of your connection to this spiritual world, I guess. And in my opinion, Jesus is sort of a modern day convenient, like one name. He's like almost like this one world religion in a way, but just of Christianity. So when you want to talk about like a really deep, complex topic, you can just talk about one of the parables, or you can just talk about this personified deity. And we're going to make a really good case for this, or at least Jan Irving and Andrew Rutejit. And shout out to Jan Irving, because he helped me when I was working on a comic book about R. Gordon Wasson. If anything, Jan Irving might be one of the world's experts on R. Gordon Wasson, along with a little bit of bias, but that's actually fine. So I'm not gonna read any of these books start to end, because again, there's Christmas cookies that are be waiting ahead. But we got quotes just to make it seem like an official book. All right, let's just get right into some of this. Again, we've got these reindeer, and here's this kind of story of Odin that it starts out with. I almost don't want to try to pronounce this. I always get it wrong. Yggdrasil tree. But this is going to be one of the main elements of this, and this whole above, so below is just like how you describe in a very simplistic way. Here's the trigger warning. This is a globe model, but just as this tree is reaching up into the air above ground with all of its permutations, it's doing the same thing underground with the root system, and this is just like a very practical, sort of like organic version of that. It's going to start talking about more of the metaphysical, the macro, the micro aspect of a lot of this. Galileo. So they're starting to learn. I mean, maybe this is the beginning of the psyop, right? This is the first psyop condition where the global shifts. Yeah, I mean, this is before the big one, right? 2009 is when this was published, and we're already getting into flat Earth. Let's just see what we got to say here. The world is firmly established; it cannot be moved. The Bible typically portrays the Earth as flat and not spherical. Numerous members of the Catholic Church who controlled and disseminated authorized beliefs of the people mirrored this philosophy in their teachings. However, not every ancient culture on Earth believed the Earth was stationary, and even fewer were under the impression the Earth was flat. These theories happen to be primarily an Indo-European belief, and it was not a belief held by the priesthood or those who were educated in any of the ancient mystery schools, and many others long before Galileo correctly calculated the circumference of the Earth. So, but in the common flat Earth logic, I guess, anything before, I don't know what it is, 1850 or 1880, there's some arbitrary number, but anything before that is just complete fabrication of history. So even if you say that someone proved or at least had the concept of a spherical Earth before Galileo, it doesn't matter because they also could have just been made up. It's a hard one. And this isn't supposed to be about flat Earth. That was just a random tangent that happened to be in this book about astrotheology and shamanism, because the astrotheology part here is exactly that, where a lot of the current religious worship and all these deities and all these secret societies, it's essentially just astrology wrapped up in extra fancy. So here's Mithra, personification of infinite time. The cult of Mithras, in my opinion, in my ignorant bumpkin Roman Catholic hick opinion, but the cult of Mithras was the first example of the state consolidating all of these sacred mystery schools and all of these esoteric rites, sympathetic magic, particularly all of it that was done in public, because in Canaan and in Carthage and all of the Phoenician sort of cities, they did sympathetic magic out in the open. They did sex magic out in the open. And when the Roman Empire came in, they didn't necessarily end it, but what they did is they made it so that only the state could do it. And then the state started doing it in secret. And then the state started doing it in secret, and you could only be part of the military, a male member of the military. And then that was essentially the Mithras, the rites of Mithras. And then from that, Sacred Spring and all these other sort of, rituals started becoming more and more popular. And from that moment on is when it's like, okay, that's Easter, that's Christmas, that's these other convenient things. Christ in the Zodiac, 11th century. So it's not a new thing. If anything, this is the older, more OG version, was that it all had to do with astrology. And it was essentially, again, my opinion, it's all mnemonic devices. These are all just like memory hacks on how to remember really complex aspects of not just when to plow your field, but, maybe when to plow your field at home, so to speak. Crucifixion in space. But space is fake and gay, so you can extrapolate that from what you want. All right, we've got some more. So that the movement of the sun. So they're just kind of showing. And then here we've got the three magi. 6th century Italy. There's the fancy dude with the fancy pants, all bringing their individual presents. And it'll explain in some of these other pages a little bit more specifics. So far, it's going through like very broad sort of topics. So this one's just on what astrotheology is in general. And then here's Christmas Eve and Christmas morning with a split. And then they're basically showing that these three wise men is Orion. And that, right here. The three wise men, or the three kings, are anthropomorphisms of the three stars of Orion's belt. Like the sun, Orion's belt rises on the eastern horizon. In early December, Orion's belt will rise above the horizon approximately an hour after sunset. In mid-January, it'll rise above the horizon approximately an hour before sunset. However, on Christmas Eve, it'll rise above the eastern horizon just after the sun sets. This occurs on the evening of December 24th, that's tonight, to the morning, December 25th. Symbolically, the three kings, Orion's belt, are following the star of Bethlehem, also known as Sirius. So the whole story, according to Astrotheology and Shamanism by Jan Irvin. So according to them, that's what this stands for. That's what the three wise men are. That's the whole concept of Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. It's essentially Orion and Sirius. And this isn't a theory that he made up. This is actually extrapolated from what a lot of the ancients also believed. And then here we got Born Under a Star from Modern Catholic Gift Card. Yep. This looks like a pretty... I mean, modern is a relative term, I guess. And here we got another little quote. We Three Kings. It actually starts here. So this is the song, right? We three kings of Orient, bearing gifts, traverse afar. Field and fountain, moor and mountain, following the star. Star of wonder, star of night. But I mean, they are being pretty specific about following this star. And a lot of people translate this to they were using that star to find the manger, and then the manger was like this, bat signal. It was like the bat signal for Jesus or the three kings. But really, if you take these lyrics literally, it's just stars falling in another star. So this is like a very core concept of this whole astrotheology. And then look, examples of Jesus at crucifixion looking to his right. In most older paintings of sculptures and crucifixion, Jesus is always looking to his right, or his head is hanging to the right side of his body. So here's all these examples. You can see they all have like a tilt. And every single one of them, his head is either looking or crouched down. And we'll explain the East Star, right? Eastern Star. People everywhere who celebrate the sunrise every Sunday by going to church and temple during the rising of the sun in the sky, and facing an altar located in the eastern side of the church. This is blatant sun worship in itself. The churches themselves are built in honor of the sun. The temples will face the east, or rather the altar will be facing east. So this is just more symbolism of, sun worship, essentially. And then here they are. They're calling out the Masons. Hopefully I don't get killed for this one. First degree tracing board. Here we've got the good news. The north, east, west, south news. And then again, kind of in typical Joseph Campbell, Hero of a Thousand Faces fashion. Here's all the different old school versions of this, and this is kind of like that sun salute. And then let's see what we're talking about the Last Supper here. Leonardo da Vinci was an initiated artist who understood the macrocosm of Jesus with his 12 celestial helpers and painted them accordingly. What da Vinci painted were 4 groups of 3 disciples totaling 12, with Jesus in the center, Jesus being the number 13. Here you see the 4 seasons with Jesus, with the sun in the center. Each disciple represents one of the signs of the zodiac constellation. And if you saw my latest show called Sound Science, I did a breakdown with Anya Soru where we looked at the lyrics of a KRS-One song called Fourth Quarter Free Throws. And it's essentially a poetic version of this entire explanation right here. And it says, to show that there were originally more than 4 Gospels, we recommend a book from HarperCollins, The Other Bible, and the Gospel of Thomas. Now, of course, once you get into this area, Gnostic. So you might get accused of being a Gnostic goober. I think that's the official academic term. But here we go. Here are the pairs of the seasons. So each circle is basically a season. And then the sun being in the center of all of them. So more evidence that this isn't a new concept that someone, dreamed up in like the 70s while they were tripping out. So, and then here's the etymology for the original days, right? So you've got Sunday. You've got Freya's Day, Friday. You've got Woden's Day, Wednesday. Mon's Day, Saturn's Day, Thor's Day, Tuesday, right? Are we getting a sort of a pattern here? Like every day of the week is essentially named after some pagan deity, and it all revolves around sun worship. And I mean, we're not saying that's evil. At least I'm not. Some people say that that's evil. I mean, it just kind of makes sense that you might worship the thing that provides energy and light and warmth and life on the entire planet, and then over time to personify that doesn't seem wrong or out of touch or anything. Although it might make you intolerant after a long time, because then people start to like really fall in love with this weird like amalgamation that they put together. Precession of the equinoxes moving backward through the zodiac. So you've got the water bearer, right? You got Pisces, Capricorn, and Sagittarius. It wouldn't shock me if I got one of those wrong. I think I got those right, though. And then here's another Mithras. So we're talking, again, the precession of the equinoxes. We go backward through the zodiac as we enter the New Ages. Unlike the precession of the equinoxes, which run forward through the zodiac in the normal monthly progression or precession. And by working your way backwards to the zodiac, you can understand how the signs of the zodiac affect symbolism throughout history. So here we've got Mithras holding the cosmic sphere and turning the zodiac to the new age. And then here's a chapter on Jordan Peterson. The Geminis, just doing Gemini stuff. It's not gay. So there's a whole breakdown of all these. This one's actually fairly important because of the Mithras connection, and the bull worship and everything. So it says Moses finds his people worshiping the bull and orders them to kill one another, and 3,000 of them died because they resisted change and continued worshiping the old age of the bull. This is like a resistance to not pay attention to the changing of the astrological times, Taurus. After fleeing Egypt, the land of the bull, Apis, Taurus, Moses, the ram/Aries, begins a new age with his followers. So again, this is this concept that Moses and this story about finding the sacred bull and the golden calf, it's really a tale of the zodiac. You're just this is like a big calendar, right? Like Disney presents the calendar. No longer were Jews to worship the Taurus, the bull. They were now in the age of Aries, and they were to worship the ram with Moses. Still today, Jews blow the ram's horn in worship. They're still foundering in the age of Aries and continue to resist the age of Jesus, Pisces, inherently skipping over it completely. So here, this again is Jan Irvin. I didn't write this book, but that's the premise, right? And that all of these astrological tales are really about people resisting and trying to hold on to the previous house of the zodiac that they were in. And then, yeah, Capricorn. So here's a shout out to Juan, the Occult Book Club. We did the Occult Anatomy of Man, written by Manly Palmer Hall, and it gets deep into like Rosicrucianism. And here's sort of this wasn't in that book, explained this clearly, but it also correlates not just the astrological sign, but to its body part. So we got Capricorn are your knees, Sagittarius is thighs, Scorpio are your sexual parts, Libra is the pelvis, Virgo is the womb, Leo's your heart. Again, this correlates to Wizard of Oz also, because that's what the lion wanted, right? He wanted a heart, because the Wizard of Oz is deep occultism, and that's not from the outside applying occultism to it. If you look into the original author, it was basically Rosicrucianism manual. Cancer is chest and breasts, Gemini is the arms, Taurus is the neck and throat. Also why you see a lot of that like bull Mithra sacrifice, they're usually cutting the neck. So it's just related, again, everything together. Aries is the head, Pisces is the feet, where you'd wash Jesus' feet, that represented the Pisces. And then Aquaman is the lower leg. Aquaman was always my least favorite zodiac. And then here we've got the mitre, right? The little fish head. It's just fun. It's fun to look at the fish head. The head of Dagon. I don't know if I'm 100% sold that it's a fish head, but it sure as hell looks like a fish head. And I guess if I'm saying that Santa's a mushroom, sure. Why can't the Pope be a fish? So, there shall be no more curse, and whoever let him take the water of life freely. They're trying to explain that the Book of Revelation even is talking about astrology, which, I mean, the Book of Revelation is hard to read completely literally, so it has to be symbolic in some ways. Maybe not. I guess if you're like complete fundamentalist. So here's a great one. This is John Allegro, who did the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, I believe. And he was discredited for a number of reasons. A lot of that just people weren't ready, to embrace the concept of psychedelics at all, but even more so to actually claim that it had something to do with Christianity was a huge upset. And we're going to get into that one a little bit in Magic Mushrooms and Religion and Alchemy. It's another really good book on all this. And then this is the lady, I believe, Maria Sabina. So Maria Sabina, this is the lady that kind of acted as the mentor or the tour guide, essentially, of Robert Gordon Wasson when he was in Oaxaca, Mexico, I believe. A number of places, but Oaxaca is where he ended up finding not just mushrooms and Maria Sabina, but I believe Salvia divinorum and a number of other things that never really got as popular. But Robert Gordon Wasson's name is all over all this stuff. And some people modern day call Maria Sabina sort of like a traitor for putting him onto this. I don't know. It's complicated. So here we go. Amanita Muscaria growing under a pine tree, and this is because these conifer trees, or trees that grow these cones, if you look at the way they're shaped compared to any other tree, right? Imagine if you had like a big bucket of water and you just dumped a bucket of water on top of this tree. You can see the water would just kind of like fall down around all the sides, and it would drip, and all that dripping would cause this big ring around the circumference of the tree, right just under it. And also, you've got this shade, because this is really dense, so you've got this immense shade that's right under the bottom of the tree, and that means that anything under here is kind of shielded from the direct sunlight, and it also kind of gets a little bit more moist here, because when this water drips down, there's just going to be a little bit more left under in the shade versus outside here where the sun's hitting it. So all that to say, this concept of like fairy rings, where you go and you see like the rings of mushrooms, is essentially because there's this different type of soil that's around in these rings where a conifer tree used to grow, and the way that it would drip down kind of like makes this area more fertile. So even after the tree's long gone, for decades even, mushrooms will continue to grow in that same sort of ring. And this is kind of this concept of, you wake up in the morning and you see these bright, red presents waiting for you. So that's one of the many, many interpretations, but that one I think really kind of stands out, and I'm sure the way that they wrote this makes way more sense. So, Babylonian Sumerian god Tamu, also known as Atis to the Phrygians, and Adonis to the Greeks and Sumerians, Atunis to the Etruscans, Adonai to the Phoenicians, Adonal, or Yahweh of Adonis, Tammuz or Thomas of the Hebrews. And they say the scholars attribute these name changes to cultural evolution of the same god. In most of these legends, the god dies young, and his birth and death are honored on his birthday at the winter solstice, Christmas. In the case of Atis, the celebration was held at the winter solstice or the vernal equinox, Easter. Pine trees were sacred to Sybil, the lover mother, and then he tortures himself, does this thing that North Star did. That's a super deep Wu-Tang reference. And then turns into a pine tree, creating the fruit under the tree. And then we've got, in Roman mythology, turns into a pine. Adonis is born from the base of the tree. And then myrrh, right? Myrrh is one of those oils that I believe the three wise men brought. So, and then we've got connections to Dionysus. His devotees wore foliage from pine trees. all of these different gods that hearken to this sort of cycle of birth and death and rebirth, they tend to share a lot of these similarities. So, and then this is where we talk about Jesus being a mushroom. So the Amanita Muscaria goes through a particular growth cycle. The growth cycle is used in many mythological stories to locate and identify the mushrooms. So this is a really key part, is that the stories that they make about the gods have all these extra information encoded in them, where to find it, what time of year to look for them, all sorts of indications that they might be, poisonous or toxic versus not poisonous. A lot of that got lost in time. That's actually pretty much what Persephone's quest is about. It's about how much of this information used to be in these old, mythological tales that got lost over time. So here we go. Tiny spores rain down onto the pine needles surrounding the mushrooms that release them, right? Deep down in the ground, the spores become mycelium, which will attach itself to the roots of the tree. These mushrooms live in what's known as a mycorrhizal symbiosis, with the tree as their host. In fact, these living organisms, mushrooms, are taxonomically classified as a symbiont. This is different from parasites of another life form in which the host is helped and in fact improved by the presence. So again, on that image of the as above so below tree, I don't remember what it was, the same exact way that the tree would grow into the air and get all the oxygen, you've got this mushroom mycelium network that grows amongst the roots, and it actually helps the tree so that it becomes kind of like a permanent fixture. And that's why these fairy rings last for so long, because that mycelium of fungus that's growing underground is like its own kind of organism. So, and then they anthropomorphize mushrooms into these gods because they're seen as the source of this perpetual state of death and rebirth. And the fact that the mushrooms keep dying and coming back and dying and coming back, even if you get rid of the tree, they keep dying and coming back. And it almost felt, I don't know if they thought it was mystical, but the symbolism of what it was doing became mystical. So this is a very, very broad overview of, why Jesus and therefore Santa might be mushrooms. And then we've got some more kind of interesting aspects of this. The egg stage of growth. So here's what the Amanita Muscaria looks like when it first starts showing its head above ground. This is after the result of a huge network of mycelium that's underground already. So once that becomes advanced enough, it'll start, sending these little dudes out into the world to go exploring a little bit. And this is the very first thing that you would see. And if you see this forming, that if you come back a little bit later, there's something to be had there. You can also, I believe, cultivate them at this point, but there wouldn't be any real reason to do that versus waiting. And this is where the concept of the Easter bunny maybe came from. And again, if you look at these old postcards and old artwork and decorations, a lot of the time they'll have a bunny and these little gnomes and these little Amanita Muscaria. Look at the mushroom that the little gnome dude is sitting on, right? And this is kind of an ode back to that original concept that you'd send your kids out to go, when you were making breakfast or getting ready for the day, you send the kids out to look for these little egg-shaped things. And if they find these little hidden Easter eggs, then, you go back home and you tell your parents, and they go out and they help you pick them. Or maybe you just send the kid out with a basket and the kid brings home the basket. And your kid's basically your dealer at that point. And then we've got lots of other references. So here's an example. It says, in a theory of creation found in India, Egypt, Phoenicia, Greece, and the modern Polynesians and Finns, the whole universe came from a cosmic egg. And the version at Memphis in Egypt broke the egg, which the sun and moon came forth. So there's a loose connection here where they're saying that because they already venerated the mushroom and related the mushroom to an egg, that then also the world becomes an egg. It's a little bit of a stretch to explain it as we're just casually browsing through this. But again, Jan Irvin does an amazing job at laying a lot of this stuff out. And then here's an even better example. Once the Amanita begins to grow a little bit more, it doesn't just look like a regular egg. Now you've got this like colorful looking thing with spots on it. And then here's the different stages of the Amanita growth cycle. So at the far right, it's an obvious mushroom, but right up until about D, it totally looks like an egg. And then at B, it starts to get spots. At C, it'll start to begin getting red. And then what you can see here is it's not exactly the same as a psilocybin mushroom, but this is kind of considered like the veil in a way. And this is it piercing the veil. Here it's literally piercing the veil, right? And that's also where some of that terminology may or may not come from. And then here's this second veil too. So once the mushroom gets big enough, this right here is keeping the spores in. And when it gets big, the cap will open up and it'll pierce this second veil, and those spores will fall down and just continue this cycle indefinitely, or until the soil can't sustain it anymore. So yeah, here you go. There's it just starting to separate from the veil. And then here's what it looks like. And just pay attention, right? Once that veil drops, once this veil falls and it kind of hangs down, this book is going to start making some references to like Catholic garments and the way that the priests would wear certain garments that are going to look very similar to this exact same aesthetic. There we go. And then again, here's that Holy Grail that I was mentioning. So as it dries out, see how it turns into this cup stage? And that's because the sun has been dehydrating it. And the center of the cap is thicker than the outside rim. So as the outside rim dries up, right, there's less area, so it kind of curls upwards as well. And then here's an example of water that's collecting in the top of one of these caps after it's turned upright. And this is a black and white book, but it describes that this water takes on kind of like a red tint to it, and then hence the holy blood, holy grail, sort of like blood inside of there. It's really maybe just water that has absorbed some of the pigment from the top of the cap. So here we go, crucifixion in space. Yeah, it's a name so cool that they had to show it twice. And then here's a fully converted, fully dried, upright Amanita Muscaria. So this is the Holy Grail. This is that concept, or at least the alleged version of this, as by Jan Irving and plenty of other people. I think this also is starting to get big into John Allegro's Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. And then here another, we've got this sort of androgynistic male and female, because the Amanita Muscaria has both the dome, the feminine dome, and it also has the male kind of phallic stem here. So the fact that its two components are kind of broken into these two things, it's super mystical, right? And then a gold nugget and a dried Amanita Muscaria. Again, if this was the color version of the book, you'd see, but this is an actual gold nugget on the left, and on the right, after the cap has fully dried up, it stops being red. The very top stops being red, and it converts to like a gold. So maybe alchemical gold. And here we've got the a Smurf hut. Literally, it even says it right there, a Smurf cabin. So yeah, the Smurfs totally lived inside of it. It says, and they're talking about the Amanita Muscaria mushroom in particular. Millions of children all over the world saw this mushroom in the Smurf cartoon in the 80s. Sears and Roebuck had an entire series of plateware with the mushroom on it. Postcards and video games like Super Mario Brothers, cartoons like Fantasia. Mushrooms are often associated with Christmas, and mushroom ornaments on the Christmas tree are not rare. Some of the oldest Christmas ornaments are red with white spotted mushrooms. And then here's another one of those examples of Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. An old holiday card, right? But look at what's in this basket. It's almost like that shaman crawling into the yurt, right? And then could also be the Easter basket. So, and here's tying a huge one to the doorknob. So that's what you got for Christmas. Here's the shaman saying, like, here's to a Happy New Year, go get blasted. Make sure you call an Uber. Santa Claus conditioning our youth. So it's going to get into a little bit of a rant, which is rightfully so, about Santa almost like diluting this and turning it into a commercial holiday, the Blackfoot. So that's just the dirt, right? The dirt where it's still kind of clinging on. And then here's another version, Amanita Muscaria holiday card. You know, that dude's, is that a kid getting drunk? We'll just say it's an elf. It's a fully grown elf, I'm sure. And then just like I had mentioned, I love it when they put the pictures right next to each other to just like really drive the point in. So I love this one. This is a great example that kind of tells the whole story. So there's the Amanita Muscaria on the right. It has already broken the veil. And is this just, you know, eyes and the human brain saying these two things look alike? Or do you think that there's a chance that this was intentionally designed to look like this? I do. I think, and of all the conspiracy theories and woo-woo ideas and everything that I've heard out there, this one I'm on board with. I 100, 200, 300% believe that a vast majority of the rituals in the Catholic Church in particular all revolve around mushrooms or psychedelics of some kind. I don't think that's crazy. This book's just is one good way of tapping into some of the reasons behind thinking that. So and there's so many more. Again, here's those like golden Eucharists, right? They're talking about communion. So imagine if that was the original Eucharist in church. And imagine if this was going to get your communion. I mean, you went to church and you tripped out with a bunch of people and you talked to God for a little while, and then you went home and you contemplated on it. And then here's another shaman. And then even the shaman's clothing, that's the point that they're making in the text here. Like even her shirt is this red and white polka dotted design because of the veneration with the Amanita. Like it was such a highly respected plant. You would dress up as it. So dressing up to personify a mushroom is not something new at all. And then here's where they could dry them, right? Because the conifer trees or the pine trees, they would be kind of water resistant, and they would also be in the sun all day. So after you pick the mushrooms up on the ground, you stick them in the tree so that the tree can dry them out. This is like, the poor man's dehydrator, essentially, or just the outdoorsman's dehydrator. And this is the same concept of the Yule log, I think, and some of like those Nordic aspects where they would put like pieces of flesh on the tree. Well, these are those pieces of flesh. It's mushroom flesh. Here's a modern day yurt. This one they actually have the chimney hole, I guess you would call it, covered up. But again, imagine that it snows over the tops of these sides here, so now no one can get in or out. The chimney becomes your way in and out of that thing. Some more examples of Santa Claus looking identical to a freaking mushroom. Maybe that's the eyes playing tricks, but I think that by this time, if you've gotten deep enough into this book on, even just on page 89, if you've gotten this far into it, I think you'll be fairly sold, at least open-minded enough to keep entertaining the idea. And this is interesting. We've got a witch. And then, why do we have a witch as a Christmas ornament, you might ask? Well, witches are nothing more than shamans who worship a mother goddess and practice herbal healing. Many fairy tales we've heard throughout life involves witches. That's true. There's tales of good witches and bad witches. The green-skinned witch riding a broom is a common Halloween icon. The word witch comes from wake, meaning to separate, hence to set aside for religious worship or to consecrate. Some debate that the word comes from Saxon word Wicca, meaning wise one, to the wise ones in the community turn to for these reasons. So he's essentially showing that the concept of a witch was just another version of a shaman. And so on the eve of Halloween, witches would gather to perform divination rites. Some would prepare entheogenic flying ointments to assist them. And they all had a base of nightshade. Nightshade, I can't remember the exact chemical that's in it, but it's not a fun one. If you have to vote, I would say skip belladonna and go to something a little bit more mild, and or mandrake. And mandrake, another shout out to Juan in the Coke Book Club in our homunculus owner's manual, which I'd grab a copy of if I had it ready. But in our homunculus owner's manual, we actually show that if you try and make a fake homunculus, you might get stuck with a mandrake. And you don't want that. You don't want to get stuck with a mandrake. Yeah, here's the homunculus owner's manual. So we're talking, and then both are extremely psychoactive plants that generate visions and facilitate astral projection. They are green leafy plants that create a green paste or ointment. This green ointment, when rubbed all over the body, especially in places where skin tissue is rich in capillaries, like your face, the mucous membrane of the huh-hus is a preferred location for females. The ointment was applied to a broom handle, and you can imagine how the rest of that goes. So this explains, in this book at least, the origin of the green skin of the witch and the broom handle, and also why witches might have some relation to Christmas as well. Here we go, Ouroboros and the Caduceus. Here's a 1682 Theosophical. So this is, yeah, now we're talking about going through the kidneys. Here's the Caduceus. And then here's some images. We've got Minerva. Minerva's usually related to wisdom, owls, Bohemian Grove, Illuminati. I mean, a lot of that has to do, again, with like deep occult knowledge. Here's a detail of her Liberty cap. And if you know, the term Liberty cap is also the name of a mushroom. Highly psychedelic one. I think it's a psilocybin mushroom. And then this Phrygian cap is also supposed to be, according to Jan Irving and the rest of this research, also represents a mushroom cap. So whenever you see someone wearing one of those funny little hats, basically every one of the seven dwarves, they're really talking about psilocybin mushrooms, these magic mushrooms here. Yeah, here's a Liberty cap. I mean, I can kind of see it, especially this one. If you're showing me this one right here, that one almost feels undeniable, but I guess it's subjective enough that people still debate over it. So, Urania's mirror. Another Caduceus, now kind of being extrapolated into this this tree. And then here's some alchemical concept. There's the homunculus. There's always got to be a homunculus if you're dealing with real magic. So homunculus front and center. Kabbalah Mineralis manuscript, 1700. What does it say here? We'll just do a quick. On the far left, the rain is falling into what looks like a spoon, right? So that's over here. Here's the rain falling into this spoon-looking thing. Notice inside the spoon is where the Ouroboros is biting its own tail, depicted with wings on top. I'll zoom in again. So there's there's the Ouroboros in the middle of the spoon with wings and biting it. And it says next to it in the middle image is the homunculus or little man urinating into the water, and the living water is being boiled up and recycled. So here's the mushroom, okay? It rains, it causes the mushrooms to grow, the mushrooms representing that symbolism of death and rebirth, which is the Ouroboros, right? So those mushrooms grow, a person eats it, a man eats those mushrooms, pees it out, quite literally, and then someone collects that pee, and then bam, alchemy, enlightenment, philosophy. You're just drinking some dude's pee. And I say that intentionally overly simplistic, but that is really what's happening. This is a formula that says drink somebody's pee if you want to get high. So there you go. On the far right is the Caduceus, completing the alchemical process of the drugs from beginning to end. This is Walter White, right? Walter White of the alchemical age. This is Paracelsus is Walter White, I guess. Stairway to Heaven. Jacob's Ladder, right? Jacob's Ladder is a dope movie about MK Ultra, mind control, and using drugs to brainwash soldiers. If you haven't ever seen Jacob's Ladder, definitely go and watch that. The perfect Christmas movie for the family. Notre Dame. What do we got here? Oh, is that a mushroom? Is he smuggling mushrooms in the church? And then they're also showing the ladder here. Freemasons. That would be dope if they... Actually, I can't say what happens in any lodges, but I would just say it would be cool if they did mushrooms. I'm not aware of any lodges that incorporate mushrooms as part of the initiation ritual. If there are any, please let me know. I'll reach out for sure. Scroll and Key, I'm going to assume. Oh no, this is all Vatican. So, and then Skull and Bones, Phi Kappa Sigma, which is one of the most OG secret societies in the U.S., I believe. They're talking about Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack climbs an intertwined ladder made of a giant beanstalk leading the heavens. In the story, he steals the giant egg, right? Again, we're going to the golden egg. The egg's in the basket, Amanita Muscaria. This can also be seen as the shaman climbing the world tree into the heavens. The connection between stealing these golden eggs and Jesus being crucified between two thieves is not a far stretch. So yeah, and then here's this quote from Blue Apples, and it says, one of Moses' operatives, Joshua, an ancestor of Jesus, was called Son of the Nun. Along with his companion, Josh dispatched to the valley of Eshol, where he stole a cluster of grapes from the son of Anak, who was living there, and returned them to Moses. None in the cluster of grapes became cryptograms that were extremely important to the Essenes, the priesthood of which Jesus was a member. So just the fact that this story existed, now all of a sudden you've got this encoded message, these, the cryptogram, it's essentially like the secret messages. So the cluster of grapes symbolize the secrets of creation, the secrets of manipulating the mother substance, and the symbol for the grail. So the whole wine, and the transubstantiation of the Catholic Church, where they turn wine into the blood of Jesus, and that also is part of communion. I feel like this is making an incredibly strong case for, at the very, very least, the Catholic Mass and transubstantiation are not these metaphorical, allegorical things as much as eat this mushroom and, trip out with us. Now I think being in a Catholic church would be the last place that you'd want to trip out, but if you got short options, at least the stained glass might be cool to stare at. Lady of Guadalupe. Represent the yoni. She's a mushroom. Here they're born again, a primitive ritual of baptism involving a symbolic rebirth passing through the yoni. So this symbol predates, Jesus being fisherman of men and like the Pisces symbolism. The scarab beetle. So, and another aspect of this too, yeah, being born of a virgin, because you don't have to bang a mushroom to get more mushrooms. The mushroom can basically reproduce asexually, or if you were in the ancient world, it might seem magical. Notice the shell and pearl above the deities. So maybe that's a mushroom. Eating the seed. Drinking the seed of Shiva. So again, almost every religion and culture that's mentioned in this book, they all eventually point it to being mushrooms. The hermaphrodites, bride and groom, male and female, created them, blessed them, called them Adam, called them Eve. But really there were just two parts of the whole that needed to come back together. And that represents the rib story and the severing of the gland stories. Here's another. This one's supposed to be like a little baby, right? Little baby Jesus or something, wrapped in swaddling clothes. And then I think this one's supposed to look maybe like a little infant with like legs. This one maybe is losing me a little bit, but I appreciate the effort that Jan put into that particular one. This is a really great one. Again, here's that growth cycle of it going from the mushroom that you would see outside into its holy grail phase. Everyone eat mushrooms with peanut butter or pizza and still puke. They don't bother me. Yeah, another trick too. So I heard. I definitely didn't do this myself, but you can just grind them up into almost like a powder and just put them into pills. And yeah, that's way easier. Put them into some empty gel tabs or something. Also, just ranch, ranch, ranch dressing goes a long ways. You might even accidentally find yourself eating more than you plan to because it just turns into a snack at a certain point. Sacrifice of Christ protecting humanity. So they're trying to show in some of these like the wings, I think. I think that at this point in the book, it's like, all right, maybe we've got them on the hook, so we're just gonna start throwing everything out there. And here's a version of again a mushroom and the veil. This is the broken veil down here. Although these ones, I feel like you'd have to maybe have a few mushrooms first, and then you'd be more on board. Madonna with the serpent, Caravaggio. This is so many different interpretations of this. I've also heard this one is again being astrological because the snakes would come back out of the ground after the winter was over, almost like a Groundhog's Day sort of thing. Here's the Virgo stepping on the head of the serpent on Christmas Eve. Again, if you oversimplified version. Here's the sculpture from Clockwork Orange, I think. And I'm not really kidding. I mean, if if you've seen Clockwork Orange and you know the scene that I'm talking about, you could absolutely convince me that this is the original inspiration, right? This is in the Vatican because, of course, why wouldn't the Vatican have a picture of a dude with a cock for a nose and balls for his chin? Yeah, it seems like that's probably what's in most of the secret Vatican archives, and that's why they won't let anyone in there. You open it up, and it's just all dicks. Here's the Rosicrucian phallic cross. Next year, this is what I want for I don't know. This I imagine what would happen if you gave that to someone for first communion. So, we're getting alchemical again. The demonstration of perfection. So this is a Rosicrucian sort of symbol, and this is, I don't even know what every single one of these little aspects is. I can see the phoenix that's biting itself to feed its own children. This is one representation of everlasting life, of like the parent feeding the young, and then the parent eventually dies and the young grow up and then they do the same thing. You've got the Ouroboros symbolism, right? Here's all these snake dog things that are eating themselves. I believe this is the tree of life and a number of other representations. And then this is the androgynous being, right? The male and the female united. There's the Leo. I'm not sure what the weird Rick and Morty alien mongoose things are in the cup. And then here's a bat with balls. Not kidding. And you might throw that into like the mushroom, right? If you cover that up, now we're looking at a mushroom again. There's the double-headed Byzantine eagle. They call it the Masonic double-headed eagle in this one. It's really a Byzantine eagle. Masonic symbolism, the double-headed eagle is standing on a rounded bulbous base depicted as the globe. The wings above the banner entwine a staff, an alchemical representation of the caduceus and mushroom. So I'm kind of on board with that, sure. I don't see it as much, but yeah, I guess that's a mushroom. If you're giving them out, I mean, sure, I'll agree. And then here's the hermaphrodite with the egg. And it looks like a shield, but it's actually a really fancy, well, it's a shield and an egg, but this shield is also symbolic. And I've heard someone describe these alchemical golden shields and paintings as like the same golden plates that like Joseph Smith maybe saw when he was translating this like angelic language. And it might have been related to John Dee and Edward Kelly's divinations. We'll have to get deeper on that one on another episode. So they're talking about Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. Here we've got the apple, right? The apple from the garden. And then they're just kind of pointing out that the visual representation of the apple with its red skin and the little white dots in some parts, and the fact that if you just bit right into an apple, it kind of takes on the same look as biting into a cap of the Amanita Muscaria. Even down to the point where this will start to turn brown fairly quickly as it oxidizes, the same way that an apple will if you take a bite and just leave it sitting outside. So again, they're pointing to this concept that the Garden of Eden and this tree of knowledge, that was them eating an Amanita Muscaria mushroom. And then here's another image right here from a chapel, 1291. And it says, this is a fresco from the Plain Chorale Chapel, 1291, as seen in Wasson's Soma, another great book, and Allegro Sacred Mushroom the Cross. It says, some researchers ignore the obvious and claim that the central figure is not a mushroom. It obviously depicts Adam and Eve on either side of the mushroom, or rather the caduceus with the serpent climbing the stem, which symbolizes what Adam and Eve were eating in the Garden of Eden, the mushroom. So here is the tree. There's the snake crawling up the tree, and then the snake is pulling down an apple and giving it to Eve. But the premise here is that the tree itself was just mushrooms. The apple was a mushroom. And I guess, Adam was a mushroom, Eve was a mushroom, the snake was a mushroom, everything was a mushroom. And then this one talks about the Eucharist being bread that didn't rise, right? Unleavened bread was replaced with manna. So here's the very beginning of losing this knowledge. And this is another really great premise and idea that Jan puts forward, is that right here. It says, what among the ritual objects of Solomon's temple were described in a biblical narrative as manna? The answer is not far to seek. According to Josh 5:11-12, unleavened bread was substituted in Canaan for the manna of the wilderness years. Immediately after the Israelites crossed the Jordan River and ate the produce of Canaan, Yahweh ceased to provide them with manna. Unleavened bread replaced manna in their diet. Long story short, which Wasson gets really deep into, is that once they left a certain area and they went through the desert, their supply of mushrooms was gone, basically forever. And then once they came back on the Canaanites, first of all, they were doing crazy stuff with Moloch and Baal and weird worship rituals and sympathetic magic, and that wasn't necessarily cool with the Israelites. So the Israelites decide, we're not going to take part in whatever it is that they're doing, and we're going to use this unleavened bread continuously, even though now there might be manna available to us, because now they're out of the wilderness, they got through the desert, and now they're back with this agricultural society. But they just continue to not use it, almost out of spite. And I know I'm way oversimplifying that, but this is a very specific event that's worth noting, because here was basically like, we're not doing mushrooms anymore. We're like, they all turned straight edge to kind of spite the rituals that they were seeing from their neighbors. And then here we goes into a little bit of tangent on the difference between a cubensis, aka a purple ringer, versus Amanita Muscaria. They're completely different in every single way, pretty much. But they're both psychedelic mushrooms. And then here's the wheel of Ezekiel, right? So they make another premise that if you look at these wheels, this is just the top of a mushroom cap, looking at it from under, right? You're looking at what you would call the gills, are the spokes of the wheels. And then here on this side, they show you there's a mushroom cap with the gills and the spokes. And they've got a whole bunch of quotes from Ezekiel here. I guess I'll read some of these. I don't think I'll get taken down for copyright violations of the Bible. Eat what is before you. Eat this scroll. Imagine that in any other context. Eat this scroll. Then go and speak to the house of Israel. Son of man, eat this scroll I am giving you and fill your stomach with it. So I ate it, and it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. So it's like, yo, go take this mushroom, and then before it wears off, go and tell everyone about this information that I'm going to start dropping on you. And then here's a quote from Revelation. I turned to see the voice that spake with me. Being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks, and in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks, one unto the Son of Man, clothed in a garment down to the foot, and girt in the paps within a golden girdle. This golden girdle, again, is that mushroom that's been dried up in the sun, and it has like this golden look to it. And then we're gonna do some with the duality. Here's the caduceus and pharmakia and pharmacies and prescription drugs. The connection between these symbols, right? So you've got the Chiros symbol of Christ on the left, and then the version on the right is prescription drugs. So they make a really good case. The same with the caduceus. The caduceus gets linked now to sort of like medical care. But that's only because in modern society we've kind of compartmentalized mental health and spiritual health and physical health as if they're all these like 3 completely different things and not all the one thing. And it used to all sort of symbolize the one thing. And again, that's why your shaman might be also your doctor and also your drug dealer. So, would you go to the doctor more if he was also a drug dealer? Like an actual one? $. This one, so this is a total tangent that I'm not even going to go down right now, but there's so many different takes on where this $sign came from, and that it might also be related to the caduceus, and that this snake on the pole, I think that was an SNL skit with Justin Timberlake, snake on a pole. But with this symbolism, this is the Tau cross, right? This is when Moses was like, my snake is more magical than your snake, and he won. It was like an old version of Pokemon, and he busted out the super evolved one. And then here we've got the caduceus, Bank of England. Normal place, right? Normal place you would see a medical symbol in the middle of the Bank of England. And then temple doors, and we're going to start getting a little bit into DMT, a little bit into the pineal gland, right? You got to have a picture of Terrence in there if you're going to talk about DMT. And then it's going to start getting more into the actual like psychedelic aspects of some of this and the subjective nature. So highly so recommended. There's actually a really great video where Jan goes over all of this along with a whole bunch of extra notes and slides that didn't even make it into this book that I highly recommend. So we'll go a little bit quicker here because again, I need my Christmas cookies. Persephone's Quest, I'm just going to sit here and recommend it. There's not even that many pictures in here. I think there's like a small section in the middle. Yeah, we got some pictures. There might be another one. Yeah, okay, so this is actually some of my favorite ones in here. You can see whenever I go crazy with the notes, it means there's like just hot fire. So this means that this entire spread is just all hot fire. Everything here, all of this is hot fire. It's like, let's get an example. The Greek mythological archetype of the tongues and belly is the Iambe Babu, who enters the Homeric hymn in Demeter in the famous scene where Metaneira offers her grieving guest wine to drink, and there's that wine symbolism, but the goddess says that to drink red wine would be a sacrilege. This is just after Iambe had brought her a stool and had thrown over it a lamb's fleece for her to sit on. Thus she remained until the scheming Iambe, amused by the holy lady with jokes and made her smile, then laugh, softening her heart, who later times pleasured her at the rites of mystery. This was the Eleusinian mystery rites, is that part of the ritual is you would have to like tell a joke or make Demeter laugh because she was lamenting the death, or at least the kidnapping of her daughter Persephone, who gets taken and brought down into Hades. So by making her laugh, he's almost seen as like a hero in a way. But that hero was a freaking mushroom. and the mushroom made her laugh, and it made her feel better, and it let her connect to her daughter who was underground. And yeah, look at the chins on these ones. Is this gonna get me? It's just a chin, right? They're just chins. But this is again sort of a symbolism of mushroom, even down to the black feet that was emphasized in this other book, right? And that's one of the cool things is when you see things that are pointed out in one book, and then you go and you look into a completely different one that's not even talking about any of that or the black feet, and then just seeing all of the connections. Here's another version, the single-footed man. So this gets described in this book is that the single-footed man holding his foot up to shield him from the sun. This is the cap of the mushroom, right? And it's trying to shield the sun, because that's kind of what that cap does. And then here's the one-eyed cyclops. Again, if you look at a mushroom from the top down, or after you remove the stem from it and look at it, it looks like a single eye, looks like a cyclops. Here's the tongue and belly creatures that we were just talking about. And the tongue and belly creatures are also supposed to represent mushrooms, according to this research by Robert Gordon Wasson. Here's some more images. So here's another version of, I can't remember the name. I think the name's in here somewhere, but the dude, I think it's called a parasol. The parasols? Or maybe that's the name of the actual thing. But again, this dude's supposed to be a mushroom. This is supposed to be a mushroom. This is supposed to be every single one of these is a mushroom. And these are all considered, the monsters, but they were all mushrooms. Here's another one with the face and belly man. Another with the little mushroom dude over here. Another one. This one says, 19th century, the folk with but 1 foot. So these are all mushrooms. Every single one of these dudes is a mushroom. Some ancient drawings of mushrooms. Some cave paintings of mushrooms. We're getting a little far from Santa here, but just this book, I cannot recommend it enough. It is one that I don't think people cite enough. Maybe just because he was a CIA-funded MK Ultra plant. I don't know. Does that invalidate all of the work? Maybe, maybe not. And we did the kids' book. And I'll just show this one too. This is another one of Robert Gordon Wasson's that he co-wrote with Albert Hoffman of Sandoz LSD fame. And they just kind of collaborate, and they're like, yeah, we all agree that all of these religious symbolism across cultures spanning the entire globe all are talking about mushrooms. Every single god is a mushroom. And you can see all the notes that I've taken in some of these books. Like hot fire. This whole page is hot fire. So yeah, Road to Ulysses. This one a little bit less so. This one's a lot freaking harder to get through. Why This Ecstasy by Raymond Prince. Very small type, no pictures, not a lot going on for it in terms of, here's some pictures, but they are not fun mushroom pictures as much. But this one shows how the same exact rites made their way into Africa. All the same symbolism is present all over in Africa as well. And then finally, Magic Mushrooms and Religion Alchemy. This is probably the better of the ones that I've shown, only because it is full color. And let's see. This one's got notes, hot fire all over the place. Whenever you see all of these notes, it means, let's just grab one of these. Let's see if it really was cool. The second page Wasson cites is from the Indian epic, the Mahabharata. The god Krishna has offered a boon to the sage Utanka. Utanka requests water whenever he wants it, and Krishna agrees. All the sage needs to do is think of Krishna and he'll have water. One day he gets thirsty and thinks of Krishna, expecting thereby to get water as promised. Instead, he sees a filthy, untouchable, and outcast surrounded by dogs. The man is urinating in a copious stream and calls out to Utanka to come and drink it. And this isn't just an OnlyFans kink. This is deeper than that. Utanka is not thrilled by the offer. It's a very nice way of putting it. but the untouchable keeps ordering him to drink. Utanka refuses, and the pissing man vanishes. Then Krishna speaks to Utanka, telling him that he has been offered water in the proper form, but was unable to recognize it. Krishna explains that he had ordered Indra, the storm god, to give Amrita, Soma, to Utanka, but Indra protested that mortals should not drink Amrita. Krishna insisted, and Indra finally relented, saying he'd only give the Amrita in the form of an untouchable. So the storm god took the form of an outcast and offered Utanka Amrita from his penis. The brief story is almost enough itself to prove that the fly agaric was once used in India as an intoxicating drink. And another aspect of this protested that mortals should not drink it because they would only get it through the form of an untouchable. So this is the reindeer pea. This is the Amanita pea in general, but also where psilocybin mushrooms come from. They usually come from cow feces, which again would be like this untouchable, maybe for different reasons. Oh man, more hot fire. Let's just do one more. That one was good, right? Consider this scenario: a guru or priest in private eats a large quantity of fly agaric, Amanita Muscaria, washing them down with water, or drinks a large amount of prepared soma. After a period of time, the guru's urine will contain the full effects of all the mushrooms or soma previously ingested, and now in a readily assimilatable form that somehow bypasses the negative effects of the original forms of substance. The guru draws off a cup of urine and gives it to a disciple who is unaware that the guru has taken soma, and tells the disciple to drink it. A good disciple does whatever is requested by the guru, even if the reasons for the request are not apparent. So the disciple drinks the urine and soon discovers the guru is indeed a holy man. Even his waste products can transport one to heaven. It's easy to see how a little deceit can go a long way in such situations. It's important for most gurus to be regarded by their followers as having supernatural powers. So this is amazing. That's why I've got, look at all these freaking colors that are surrounding all the claims on this page. But what an amazing concept that if I eat this mushroom and, you know, I go through whatever I went through, and then I invite my friends over and I have them all drink my pee, and they all start tripping, and no one had any idea that was just because I had eaten mushrooms before, and I just become known as like that guy that you trip when you drink his pee. Like, you'd become, you know, you'd get invited to more parties probably. So I think that's such a fascinating concept, though, that again, the movie Apocalypto, right, where the priest understands the concept of an eclipse and then uses that against everyone by pretending that like he has some sort of control over it, when in reality he's just describing what he knows is going to happen. Here's some more. There's going to be a lot of images of just like iconography and religious sculptures where they're eating mushrooms. Some more, another big mushroom. The Secrets of Eden, another entire chapter in this book on that. Ancient Israel, they also talk about the unleavened bread. And then here we go, here's some nice color pictures. So here's the Easter egg, right? Here's that Holy Grail. See how it turns gold on the outside? And then in the middle, imagine if it had rained and water sits there and it collects, and some of that red pigment leaches into the water to where the mushroom itself looks like a golden chalice with red liquid on the inside of it. And then again, imagine these kind of looking like Easter eggs. And you might not see the stalk if you're out looking, right? So this is what you see poking up. And that's, in theory, that is the Easter egg. That's why like they're all colorful and spotted. And although there's plenty of eggs that are also colorful and spotted, just to throw it out there, it's not just mushrooms. So, and then look at how this almost looks like a bird's nest, right? Like a basket. So this is, again, maybe one of the origins of that story of the Easter Bunny and finding eggs inside of a basket. Because essentially the mushroom's growing up and pushing itself through all of this dried out grass, right? So it's the one making the basket. And then here's someone's really good haul. I think this is actually the cover photo. Yeah, this is where the cover comes from. And then they removed all of the stalks from the caps. Here's another really good image of that upright turning. This one hasn't turned gold yet, but you can see how it looks like a little chalice, like a little cup. And maybe after a day or two of being in the sun, this all turns gold. And then there you go. There's a great example of the golden egg, right? Here's the Jack and the Beanstalk and the goose that laid the golden eggs. These are the golden eggs that we're talking about. Allegedly. Here, let's just skip over to some more of the color pictures. Those are fun. Another one. All mushrooms. This one, you can see it's starting to dry out and crack. See how it turns this gold color? Almost like flesh cracking. Here's some that are completely dried out. So after it turns upright and then it starts drying out even more. This is kind of like the final stage. And they're making sort of a direct connection here with like serpents or dragons. That maybe these looks like. This one might be a little bit of a stretch for me, but I'm down with it. I'm down with these being serpents and dragons. I think everything could potentially be a mushroom. I'm also a huge fan of this idea that mushrooms are the first super intelligent organism, and that all mushrooms are essentially one massive organism that's kind of sentient across the entire earth because it can all talk to each other in this big like neural net. It's like an organic Skynet. And that the mushrooms are actually relying on humans to spread their spores into outer space, so that every evolution that we perceive that was for humanity or other animals is really just us being manipulated by this global mushroom god that's trying to spread its spores throughout space, because it sees that humans are the best chance that it has to continue living off of this planet. And no, I'm not kidding. This is actually some of the stuff that I believe, but I only try to tell these stories through comic books because it sounds crazy when I just say it out loud. So, but if you put it to some cool artwork, it makes more sense. Again, here's the dragon. Here's some golden, some holy grails. All right, and then above left, his head and hair were white as wool, or as snow, and his eyes like a burning flame. So they're trying to say, you know, Jesus is a mushroom. Here's a really great example of how that water, it'll leach some of that red pigment into it and start looking like blood. And then here's an actual picture of the Holy Grail, right? Jesus coming out of it. And the reason why this, I guess, makes so much sense to me, especially this Holy Grail part, again, is that this concept of transubstantiation. Why is it that a cracker has all this like magical abilities? Why is drinking wine all of a sudden this like magical process? This explains both of those things very succinctly, and it explains Easter, and it explains Christmas, and it explains alchemy. It just explains something. Yeah, so here's the shield, right? The mirror that you're looking into that kind of transports you to an alternate reality. Well, look, there's the mirror, right? Mirror. It's a mushroom. And then even the wings, right? This image, it's easy to overlook, but almost every aspect of this image is a mushroom. First, it's the dude. See how he's standing with his legs together, like it's a single stalk, like one stem. He's got the veil. He's got this mirror shield, which we just saw here is the mirror shield. He's holding up the egg, which is this phase. Look at his wings. See how the wing is like red and white? Now look at this severed mushroom. So they're trying to show how this red and white wing is just also another representation of the exact same mushroom. So I think it's this is a really incredible one. And then even the two heads, if you just imagine the shape, right? You've got like a circle combined with like another circle, and then they're comparing it to this. So they're basically saying that the left and the right head here is like the cap and the stalk of the mushroom here. That one might be a little bit of a stretch, but I love this spread and like these visuals and what they're trying to show here. And then here again we've got Jesus and what looks very similar to the inside of a gill of one of those mushrooms. It's all been dried out. And then here we've got some more. Behold the Lamb of God. They got mushrooms on their heads. Jesus lying in a mushroom manger, mushroom-like manger. I like that. Yeah. So yeah, this is magic mushrooms in religion and alchemy. And then a little surprise bonus. This one doesn't really have anything to do with Santa or Jesus or anything, but it is a really cool book about mushrooms. And I'll probably completely butcher the names of everyone involved here. So, for Valentina Pavlovna Wasson, I believe this is the daughter of Robert Gordon Wasson. Maria Sabina, which we already mentioned, was the Mexican shaman in Oaxaca that basically served as Robert Gordon Wasson's mentor. I'm not sure who Robert Hyman and Kate Levitt are. Maybe I should. So this book anyway is called Mycelium Wassoni, which I believe this is Wasson, as in Robert Gordon Wasson. But it's just like a really trippy comic book. Is that a CIA logo? Yeah. So, I mean, there's no secrets that the CIA was front and center to the entire psychedelic movement in the Western world. Like, it might sound like conspiracy theory talk, but like no one actually denies it. It's in all of the official records. All of the people that are involved, Henry Luce and Robert Gordon Wasson, everyone. This kind of describes this whole entire, all of these things that we kind of talked about in all these books. It's just shown in like a much more illustrated and like more of a surreal way, I guess. So this is supposed to be Maria Sabina, right? And you got all these people coming from far and wide. Here's this reindeer concept again, wearing the dress. Here's the reindeer, peeing. Look at how excited she is. She's like, oh, hell yeah. This reindeer pee is going to be the best batch yet. So this is a great book. I've got a bunch of other books that are specific to mushrooms and comics too. So maybe I'll pull one of those out at some point and just go through all of those. But this one's so cool. And this one's cool because it's sort of an ode, as you might expect from the namesake, that Robert Gordon Wasson, when he saw that his wife, this is it. Oh man, this is actually it here. So he's going out hiking with his wife, right? And she comes from Russia. Gordon comes from the States, essentially. Like he's kind of an American at this point. And he sees her run over to this pile of mushrooms and just start eating them. And he's flipping out, thinking that she's this bumpkin Russian idiot that's now going to die. And he legitimately is thinking that his wife's going to die because she's eating all these poisonous mushrooms. But she doesn't die. And in fact, she starts telling him, oh, look, there's this kind of mushroom, and there's this kind of mushroom, and this, and this, and this, and this. And Gordon Wasson's realizing in this moment, wow, I'm the ignorant rube here. And I guess I've always just assumed that like mushroom was just a thing. Just like all mushrooms were just mushroom and different colors and shapes. But she's letting him know, like, no, like there's all these different types. And he becomes incredibly fascinated because she says, we just eat this. And he's like, no, that's disgusting. And she's telling him, no, you're wrong. Like this is what we eat. Like we go out and we forage for these things. And this is a complete mind-bending sort of experience for him. Would you eat dirt or bugs? And it's like, this is the information being hidden in this like untouchable manner, right? It's growing out of the ground, out of the dirt, sometimes out of, poop. And it's got bugs and it's got stuff crawling all over it. Why the hell would you want to eat that thing? That's not food. That's not what we learned food to be. And again, she's like, no, this is great. Let's start eating this. And she keeps telling you, you're wrong, you're wrong. And this is the catalyst where Robert Gordon Wasson realizes, I don't know anything. I thought I was like the smart, college-educated, CIA-funded VP of JP Morgan, bank. And he thought like some rube that every mushroom was the same mushroom and that every mushroom was going to kill you. And in fact, at this point, I think in English, there was only a small handful of words that you would use to talk about mushrooms. And a lot of them had to do with like deadly nightshade, death caps. It was only like a handful of mushrooms that people even knew about to eat. So this explains his entire fascination with mushrooms and how it started. Really cool book about it, although you might not get all of these references unless you know all this extra research that I just dropped on you. So you're welcome. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to everyone that hang out. What's up, Bernie, Crypto Alchemist, Tiger Lily, Tony, Seaman Mac, everybody that's coming here. I appreciate you guys. If you didn't already, we'll still have some Hunter Biden party packs for the new year. Or might even make some New Year edition versions of some of these guys. And then hopefully you guys get everything you want for Christmas. I know that it's a little bit retro, but I want to get a PlayStation 1 game. And there was one that I saw someone advertising online from 97, I think it said. Anyway, if anyone knows where to get a copy of Epstein's Quest, please drop me a link in the comments. And until then, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
This is Epstein's Quest, fly the lowly town express. Call him Jeffrey or just Jeff. This is Epstein's Quest. Fly the lowly town express. Call him Jeffrey or just Jeff. This is Epstein's Quest.
That's right. In Epstein's Quest, you get to travel the world, see the sights, and take part in unspeakable pleasures. Blackmail your friends for fun and profit, featuring all your favorite characters of the dark underworld and beyond. Bill and Hillary, Trump and Melania, with guest appearances by Chris Tucker, Bill Gates, and more. To find out, just search for Epstein's Island online and play the all-new game, Epstein's Quest, from developer Paranoid American. For more details, visit paranoidamerican.com.